To review the concepts of fractions, let's start from the beginning. When we divide figures into regions, each of the regions must be divided into equal parts. On the top row, we have 3 different plane figures divided into different regions. You can see the first one is divided in half. There is 1/2 red and 1/2 blue. The same holds true for the circle. 1/2 of the figure is blue, 1/2 of the figure is red. When we look at the final rectangle, we see that this rectangle is divided into 4 equal parts. 1 yellow part, 1 red part, 1 green part, and 1 blue part. This rectangle is divided into fourths. Each of the colors is exactly 1/4 of the plane figure. Looking now at the bottom row of shapes, you can see that these shapes are not divided equally. Their parts are not equal. The blue part in our first rectangle occupies half of the area, and the red and yellow share the other half of the region. So this is not divided into equal parts. Next, we see a circle. You can see that that circle does not have a line through the exact center of the circle. Therefore, it is not divided into equal parts. The regions are not equal. The same is true for our final rectangle. We can see 4 different colors. However, they do not share equal parts of this rectangle. So for our purposes of discussing fractions today, this is not divided into equal regions. Fractions must be divided into equal parts within a region. Our next topic for today is fractions and regions. So first of all, let's consider unit fractions. As we've stated before, a unit fraction will always have a 1 in the numerator position. So in our first figure, we must count the number of parts that this rectangle is divided into. And each of those different parts represent 1 of 6 parts. Each part is 1/6 of the area. Next, we have a circle. It's divided simply into halves. 1 part is 1/2 of the region. So a unit fraction, again, has 1 in the numerator position, and the number of parts determine the denominator. Looking at our final figure on this page, we see that this figure is divided into 4 parts. So each part represents 1 of the 4 parts of this rectangle. Next, let's discuss the number of parts for each of the shaded regions. So as we see the first figure, let's think about the red sections. You can see that there are 2 of 6 parts red. So 2/6 of this shape is red. On the circle, we can see that 1/2 of this shape is red. Looking at our final rectangle, notice that 2 parts of the 4 are red. So 2/4 of the rectangle is red. Next, let's think about the blue regions of these figures. In the first rectangle, we know that it's divided into 6 parts. 4 of those parts are blue. So 4/6 of this rectangle is the color blue. The circle is fairly easy to tell. 1/2 of the circle is blue. And then when we look at our final rectangle, you can see that 1 of the 4 parts is blue. Doesn't look like we're going to get that line, but you can imagine that it's there. Finally, we've finished both of the first 2 figures, but we still have 1 color left. So looking at our final rectangle, we can see that there is 1 part yellow out of the 4 parts. A unit fraction will always have 1 in the numerator position, and the denominator is determined by how many parts a figure is divided into. Reviewing, we see that our first rectangle has 2/6 red and 4/6 of the figure is blue. The circle is divided evenly into halves, 1/2 red, 1/2 blue, and the rectangle is divided into 4 parts. 2/4 are red, 1/4 is blue, and 1/4 is yellow. Our next topic for today are fractions and sets. We have a set of 9 geometric shapes on this page. Let's find out the fractional part of each of the different shapes for our purposes on this section. Let's first look at the red rectangles. We can see that the red rectangles have 2 of the 9 parts. There are 2 red rectangles of the 9 different geometric shapes. Next, let's consider the blue triangles. When we count, we can see there are 3 blue triangles. So 3 of the 9 shapes are blue triangles, or 3/9 of the shapes are blue triangles. Finally, we have yellow circles. When we look closely, we can see there are 4 yellow circles among the 9 shapes. So 4/9 of the shapes are yellow circles. To review, the set is made of 9 geometric shapes. 2/9 of the shapes are red rectangles. 3/9 of the shapes are blue triangles, and 4/9 of the shapes are yellow circles. Our next topic for consideration is fractional parts of a set. So let's look at our first problem. We have a set of 10 red circles. We want to divide that set into 1/2. So 1/2 of the 10 shapes is our question for today. Remember, the denominator will tell you how many parts to divide a set into. We can see for these red circles that 1/2 of the set equals 5. So 1/2 of 10 equals 5. Next, we have a set of hearts. Counting the hearts, we can see there are 12. There are 12 hearts. Our interest for today is 1/4 of the hearts. So 1/4 of the 12 hearts equals, and we can divide that evenly into 4 parts, 1/4 of those parts equals 3. So again, you can see that the denominator determines the equal number of parts that will be found in a set. In the first set, the red circles, the denominator is 2. So we looked for 2 equal parts within the red circles. And 1/2 of the 10 equaled 5. In the pink hearts, we were looking for 4 parts. The denominator told us that this set needed to be divided into 4 equal parts. 1/4 of 12 equals 3. Next, let's think about fraction number lines. If we start with 0 and our ending point of this line segment is 1, we need to find out how many parts this number line is divided into. So starting at 0, we can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts. Again, the denominator determines how many parts. So moving from 0, we would say that this point would be 1/5. The next point would be 2/5, then 3/5, 4/5, and then finally the number 1. The number 1 can also be described as 5/5. 1 equals 5/5. Next, let's look at our number line on the bottom. So again, with this line segment, we're going to say that the parts are between 0 and 1. We can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 parts in this number line. So starting at 0 or 0/8, we then would have 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 1. 1 can also be named 8/8. Oh dear, we're into that spot again where it's hard to make our number. So 8/8. Our next area of focus is locating fractions on the number line. Remember, a number line does not always have to start at 0. And in fact, the top number line will begin at 2 and 1/2. The denominator suggests how many parts are in a section. 2 means that this number line is divided by halves. So 2.5 begins our number line. So the next point would be 3, followed by 3.5, then the whole number 4, then 4.5, and 5. If we wanted to represent these numbers in a fractional form, 2.5 could also be called 5/2. Next, we would have 6/2, which is also known as 3. 7/2. 8/2 would be equal to 4. 9/2, and then 10/2. And 10/2 is also equal to 5. Looking at our bottom number line, let's try a number line using fourths. And perhaps we will start at 5 and 2/4. The next point then would be 5 and 3/4. Then the whole number 6. 6 and 1/4 comes next. 6 and 2/4. 6 and 3/4. And then the final number for this number line would be 7. So as you can see, both number lines have equal spacing. The denominators stay exactly the same throughout the number line. Our final concept for today's video is fractions and length. Length describes how long something is. In our first example, you can see the 1/2 is represented by the red strip. Beneath it, there is a yellow fractional strip. This strip is divided into thirds. A unit fraction has 1 in the numerator position, and the denominator tells how many parts would make the whole. So 3 parts would make the whole. So the unit fraction for this fractional strip is 1/3. But what's the whole length of this fractional strip? We can see there's 2 thirds. There are 2 1/3 parts. So the total length of this strip is 2/3. The yellow strip is 2/3 of the whole red strip. Similarly, let's look at the bottom example. The red strip shows a whole number of 1. The yellow fractional strip below it is broken into fourths. Each part is 1/4 of what that red strip would be. So a unit fraction, again, the numerator is always 1, and these parts happen to be broken into fourths. So the denominator is 4, because there would be 4 parts in this fractional strip. But what's the length of this fractional strip? We can see that there's 3 1/4 parts. So this yellow fractional strip would be 3/4 of the red 1/2. So 3/4 is the fractional strip that we can see in this example. This concludes today's overview of basic concepts in fractions.